I'm here with former Western Hockey League defenseman, NHL Stanley Cup winner, and the 1998 Memorial Cup champion with the Portland Winterhawks. Currently, he is employed with the NHL as the Director of Social Impact, Growth, and Legislative Affairs. Andrew Ference. Andrew, how's your summer been?
Well, unique, I guess, like most people, but we're making the most of it. Life goes on to a certain extent. Living in Edmonton, Alberta, I was right now, and sent the oldest daughter off to prep school out in the island, and the other one's at home doing school right now. So, it was a crazy summer, obviously with lockdown and work being conducted like this. But like I said, same boat as everybody, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. It's unique in the fact that everybody has to adjust, but everybody's adjusting at the same time and together, and it's just unknown, and we don't know what next week could bring or even next month. So it's a really exciting time with a lot of opportunity. And, what has it been like for you in your role with the NHL? How has it affected what you're trying to do? And are there any projects you're currently working on right now?
Yeah, it's obviously affected us across the board. The disruption of the season was obviously has ripple effects across the whole business. It's amazing. It's not my department. It's more events that put on the bubble here in Edmonton and did such an amazing job of getting through playoffs here, going into the finals here right away. So that's been a tremendous success as far as pulling that off. On my side, our department, we're more focused on the youth level, some of the youth programming, and obviously some government affairs issues. So some projects have been able to go forth without much problem at all. We've been primarily working on our culture hotline, which is for all of our employees and players and coaches, to make sure that we're following appropriate culture throughout the NHL and business, and so I've been working hard on that, and also some street hockey initiatives, which have been a lot more effective because obviously that's a programming thing with at our youth level that youth sports in general has been put on pause in many parts of North America. So certain aspects we've been able to build up, but pretty tough to actually, implement the programming in times like these. So it's been a bit of both, some full steam ahead and some, really disrupted things at work.
You talked about culture there. You obviously were on a 98 Memorial Cup winning team, a 2011 Stanley Cup winning team. You've been around winning cultures and successful cultures. So what's the type of culture you're trying to develop with the NHL and the people that work with you?
Well, there's some, very, very straightforward things as far as, what's right and what's wrong in today's workplace. And that's no different from the NHL to most corporations throughout North America now that there's obviously been a major focus on that over the past year. And the NHL is no different. We're a workplace that's not just hockey players and coaches. We have a significant number of employees throughout North America in our New York offices and our Montreal and Toronto offices. So, like most places, it's a normal workplace. A lot of people that don't play hockey or don't know a lot about hockey, but they come to work every day, and we're trying to create an environment that is positive and fair for everybody. So yes, it's a culture when we think of a locker room and about youth hockey and what's acceptable and what's, creating an environment where everybody feels welcome and has a good time and has an enjoyable time and a positive experience with hockey. But there's also the stuff that's completely outside of the arena and just the workplace environment for people at the NHL level, but also at our club level, whether you're selling tickets or corporate sponsorship or you're on the legal department, it's a pretty wide scope when you're thinking of stuff like that. But culture in general, I think whether it is in the locker room or in the middle of some corporation, I think it is pretty simple, right? It is about, being a good person and treating other people, the way you want to be treated. And it's a lot of it falls back to, the stuff that, most of us, I think, probably learned as kids. And I think the most successful teams I had been on and whether that's the Memorial Cup teams or the Stanley Cup teams, we had really strong leadership, from coaches and from general managers and from the older players in the room, the veterans. that really drove down that really positive environment, so when you did show up to work, you felt good about yourself, you felt good about the environment that you were part of, and you felt like you're part of something, much bigger than yourself. And so that was, like I said, there's a lot of things that do transfer from a positive, team atmosphere into the workplace.
Well, just talking about that transition a little bit more, what has it been like for you transitioning from the dressing room, transitioning from the locker room to a business setting, especially one with the NHL, which is such a high profile league in North America? Were you able to make that transition pretty easily, or was there, some aspects of the job that you didn't really realize were going to be as difficult as they've become?
Well, it's unique for sure. I think it's, spending so long in a locker room and in a team environment, I think there's always an awareness that it's not normal. It's obviously a fairly unique position to be in, and things just are done differently, and things are very immediate. When you're in sports, it's all about the here and now today. What are you doing in the gym? What are you doing in practice? What skill are you working on? Did you win? Did you lose? What are you fixing that can be implemented in tomorrow's game? So it's a very, very here and now business where, the corporate side, it's long-term stuff. Right. And I think even the department that I work on, even within the NHL is more of a longer term department. We're looking at 5, 10, 15, 20 year, projects and nudges, in our sport that, that take a lot of patience. So probably one of the bigger adjustments has been that is just the patience to, not expect immediate results and not expect, things to just happen at the drop of a dime. It's really, those small nudges to get to where you're trying to get to. But, that was something that I think I've come to really appreciate about, being a hockey player and being in sports is the fact that you can, so tactically go after a specific area of weakness or a specific thing you want to work on. And over the course of a very short amount of time, get better at it or change it, So I think, it was a big wake up call.
Well, we're talking about culture and being the good person and patience, and you've certainly demonstrated that your entire career. I mean, we go back to your days in Portland. In 1998, you guys won the Memorial Cup, and then in 1999, you won the WHL Humanitarian of the Year. Oh, do you remember any of the projects that you were involved in that year in Portland that led you to winning the award?
Well, in preparation for this call, I was watching the previous episode that you guys put out, and it's been a while. Honestly, I was thinking back. I'm like, geez, like what did we do back then? And to be honest, I've not just my career, but even the things that I did, off the ice, I give, almost, I mean, a lot of credit to my parents. My parents brought me up well, but to my coach, Brent Peterson, who coached us in Portland and obviously went on and coached many years in Nashville as well, and is still involved with the Predators. But Brent was a very, just really good human being. And I know when I was making the decision whether or not to go to the WHL or go college route, in talking to Portland, I know my parents took really good comfort in talking to Brent and talking to Ken Hodge, who was there at the time, that their priority was to develop good men, and good human beings. And it wasn't all hockey, right? They talked a lot about school. They talked about the importance of, getting the good education, about, being good people. And I think that was, that was who they were really in their hearts too. That's what, it wasn't just a sales pitch. That's actually how they delivered their messages to us as players too in the locker room, and what they demanded of us as people. And so specific initiatives, I mean, we went out, we're in the community, and I think that the teams now and the players now do way more than we did. It's a lot more of a common practice for junior teams to get out and do things much like, I think at an NHL level, they've done for a long time. When I was playing junior, there's a few things that I went out and did on my own with, kids in hockey in Portland, some different youth services that were organized through churches around Portland. I was quite involved with those. But there wasn't a ton, to be honest. I think the guys now have a lot more of a built up system within the teams that help them, and guide them in the community to do more community service. But I think at the core of it, like I said, going back to Brent, is he constantly stressed that he wanted to build good men and good human beings, and in turn that will create a good hockey team. If you have good people, and if you have people that are striving to be good good human beings, in turn that will develop a good hockey team. So I'm a big fan of rugby as well. So I'm a huge rugby fan, and I've read a lot, and actually gotten to know a couple New Zealand All Blacks, and it's somewhat their philosophy as well. And it's one of the most successful sports franchises, or sports teams in the world, and really that's their core values as well too, right? Like they go after good human beings, and they stress the importance of developing good people, and they'll pick good people over good talent because they know the importance of that, right? And so I think Brent could have been on the staff of the All Blacks, because a lot of the things that he was teaching us as young junior players really falls in line with their belief system as well. And I give him full credit for opening my eyes as a 16-year-old, because I was pretty clueless to most things in life at that age, and he really taught me a lot.
You talked about choosing good people over good players. And I think one of the most famous stories about you is in 1997, you were unranked before the NHL draft, and you sent a letter to every single NHL GM, pretty much detailing in what, if you went to school, would be an academic paper about why you should be an NHL player. I mean, when I reread that today, researching you before this, it's unbelievable that you had the foresight to do that. And not only did you get drafted in the 8th round by the Pittsburgh Penguins, but you ended up playing 30 games with Pittsburgh 2 years later. So what went into that decision to write that letter? And then the second thing is, what did you do once you got to Pittsburgh to show them that you were a guy that at a very young age could come in and play important games and important minutes for them?
Yeah, it's funny to look back. I mean, that's what went into it. I mean, a recipe of really good self-confidence, a chip on my shoulder, probably from not being ranked, and a dose of desperation, I think. I mean, it's a little bit of all of it, I guess. I mean, we had a lot of success in Portland. I had a great junior career, and but I knew, at the time it was an era of very big defensemen, right? So, I had definitely at a disadvantage being 5'10", trying to get drafted in the NHL at that time. So, so at the time, I wasn't ranked at all, and it wasn't. The combine wasn't held in the fashion that it is today, where it's a huge event. But there was an element of testing that was being done, by teams, for the higher prospects. And I always knew that I would do really well in that kind of testing. Fitness was always a big part of what I took pride in, as being a fit player, and I knew that if I took those tests, I could really do well especially against some other players. And so, included with that letter of just explaining, like, hey, look, I'm not ranked. I think I should be. I think you should take a chance on me, kind of thing. I also included testing scores, because I went and did my own testing at the University of Alberta, who basically had the same protocols for the testing that they're doing at the NHL level, and gave them my numbers. I said, obviously not being ranked, I don't have the opportunity to do this, but here's my numbers anyways, kind of thing. and I think it, like I said, the desperation side of it was knowing that I sacrificed a lot, to take one chance at making the NHL and making hockey a thing. And if you don't really go after it with everything you got, like, what's the point, right? And so at that point, if I wasn't going to get drafted, I knew the road would be much, much tougher. It's harder to get your foot in the door if you don't get drafted. Can it happen? 100%, of course. Like, being drafted is not the end all and be all, but without a doubt, getting your foot in the door, getting a chance to go to a training camp, is a huge step for any player. And so, credit, to the Penguins that took me. I think actually Brent, back to the coach, I think he put in a good solid word for me when a couple teams did call back after I had sent that out. And he said, no, like, take a chance, like, it's an 8th round pick, who else are you going to pick at that point? So, they did take a chance, and I, made it a mission. Like I said, you're going to get as a late round pick, you get one opportunity to make yourself stand out from others. And so I took full advantage of that. Went to Pittsburgh. They did have physical testing at training camp. I've always been a big cyclist and paid a lot of attention to my fitness. So I did really well in my fitness testing, which allowed me to stand out from the crowd immediately. And then in our first kind of inter squad game, where, team white versus team yellow or whatever it was, I ended up getting in a fight with the guy that was drafted in the first round before, big defenseman, and I did all right. And so, just played my heart out, right? I had a few days to make a name for myself and played my heart out and just did everything I could to just try to stand apart from the crowd. And there's certain things in hockey and in your career that you can control. And then there's a lot that's completely out of your control, right? So I was just concentrated on, like, here's the 5 things that I have direct control over, how I play, how I work out, how I'm preparing myself. And then I just had, the resignation that, some of it's just going to be out of my control. And there's only so much you can do, right? So, it was good hard work and good fortunate timing and luck as well to go in a situation like Pittsburgh where, a defenseman got hurt and, there's the right type of coach, for my style of play, and I got a chance. So sometimes it just has to work out too.
Hey, and you made the most of that chance. 4 seasons in Pittsburgh, 4 seasons in Calgary, 7 in Boston, and then you finished your career with the Edmonton Oilers. And you were involved in causes all the way throughout your career. In 2006, you reached out to Right to Play. And then the one project I'd like to ask you about is the November Project, which you were a part of in Boston, is where it started, I believe. And it's continued all the way on from, I think, 2011 or 13, one of those two.
Yeah.
And
so it's been a while.
Yeah. Can you just explain kind of what the idea behind the November Project was and why it's exploded kind of the way it did?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I mean, I think just get my dates straight too. I think 2011 was the NHL lockout. It was the second one that I went through. So I was in Boston training, getting ready for the season, and then obviously going into a lockout. It extended, our preparation time. So I was doing a lot of workouts at Harvard Stadium. It was open access stadium, and running stairs was always a thing that really helped me. So I'd run the stairs there, and I had a mutual friend that told me to hook up with this other crew that was running stairs, and had some super fit people out there. So I went and joined them one day, and it was a really super strong group that was really welcoming and nice. And it was these guys that started this thing called the November Project because, frankly, they didn't have a lot of money to go to gyms and stuff. And they hated working out alone, and they wanted to, keep each other accountable. So they created this group where, they kind of committed to each other to show up and run these stairs every Wednesday. And then that turned into like, okay, let's do this every Monday as well. And it just kind of built up to, this group that was highly accountable to each other, super positive, and free, right? Like anybody can come, super inclusive, very welcoming to, whoever wanted to come, be a positive member of that kind of community. And so I did that in Boston, worked out with them, ran stairs, had these, great moments with this great group of people. And then when I, signed in Edmonton as a free agent, that was a lot of fun, right? I met new friends and had this kind of group outside of hockey that I really enjoyed being around. And I assumed that the same kind of a group could work in Edmonton. And so I kind of put the word out, and I enlisted the help of my sister to help kind of lead it because, I was still playing hockey. And then, one of the guys that showed up to the very first workout here in Edmonton, when I put it out, he ended up being a very close friend as well. So I asked him to help lead when I had to go back to the season of playing and I wouldn't be able to show up every morning. And so between him, his name is Nadeem Shin, and my sister Jen, they took over leadership, and then I would pop in as kind of like a assistant leader, when I could, when I was home. And we created this community in Edmonton as well, much like the Boston one that met 3 days a week in the mornings and ended up being all year round, even in the middle of the winter. And it's been going for many, many years. I've stepped away from leadership, in the last year and a bit. But it still goes on. And we built this great community of hundreds of people that, it gets together. It has made incredible friendships, different bonds with the city and has, been fit. Just, change lives through kind of this real simple, simple idea of just free fitness and good, positive community.
Yeah, it's a grassroots community initiative, which is, something you've been famous for your whole career. It's a big part of why you won the King Clancy Award in 2014. And I'm sure it's a big reason why you got hired by the NHL after you retired. And what was that like when you retired? Did you know that there was a position at the NHL for you, or was it something that you reached out to them and had some ideas and some conversations just went from there?
Yeah, I had some pre-existing relationships with the NHL just because while I was playing, with the union, I started a carbon neutral challenge. So an environmental initiative within our union where I challenged guys to carbon offset their entire year travel as individual players. And so that ended up being a pretty cool initiative that started in Calgary and kind of spread out to other teams, while I was playing for the Flames. And through that, I met people that worked at the NHL who eventually started at NHL Green, which is the environmental platform at the NHL where, where they're doing, all the initiatives as well. And so I had those relationships and worked a bit with them as a player, got to know the commissioner a little bit through that, but also through collective bargaining, through the lockouts I went through. And then the last couple of years that I was in the NHL, I wanted to finish up some of my schooling and kind of further educate myself on some of the environmental issues that I was very interested in. So I took schooling through Harvard Extension School and went into corporate sustainability and innovation for the last couple of years that I was playing for the Oilers. And so I finished up that program and put some meat, educational meat on my passion around the environment and sustainability. And that really just kind of fit well with some of the work that my department's, my current department at the NHL was doing, on sustainability, on, obviously, working for a big corporation. It's not just about being green, but like, how does it affect business, and so that really lined up with what I was learning at school. And so really, there's a bit of both things. I was getting older and knew that my career was obviously winding down. The writing was on the wall there. So, like all hockey players, there's a long life after hockey. And I knew that I didn't want to just sit around. I'm not a big golf fan. So it's just, I wanted to, have something to wake up in the morning and work towards and have projects. And this is something that, I obviously care deeply about and fortunate enough that, I can stay in hockey, but it's also another part of my life that, means a lot to me.
The more you talk, the more I think what makes you such an interesting person is how, there's this caricature of an NHL hockey player who's just one dimensional. And I mean, you have so many different avenues in your life of the projects that you're interested in, the causes that you want to be involved in. It's just, it's inspiring to hear, even for me, just to hear about your life and everything that you're continuing to do. But with that being said, outside of winning the Stanley Cup, what do you think is your biggest accomplishment or the thing that you look back on throughout your career that you said that you believe affected the most people?
Oh man. I think like to the original point, I think I take a lot of pride, and I did learn from other players that I played with. I think probably one of the things I strived to be was, complex, right? Like to have different things going on and to make sure that I was investing my time and energy into to many things. And I think that's probably, that is almost what I lead with when I give advice to younger players, guys that are trying to make the NHL or WHL or different levels of hockey is the advice I give is don't lose, your interests and your curiosity and your passion for things other than hockey. Make sure that you're investing in those other parts of your life and those other parts of your brain that aren't about hockey. Make sure that you're creating friends outside of hockey, because it is very, very important, not only while you're playing to have an escape from the game and to make sure that you have, other things in your life that you can balance out, the pressures of playing and the stress that comes with trying to make it in hockey. But for sure, of course, after hockey, it helps you out by making sure that you have other interests and you have other things that you're capable of doing and things that you're interested in and friends that are interested in other things that aren't just about the game, right? So that is probably the top advice that I give to other people, because it actually, I think, helps your performance as well. It gives you a level of confidence that, should I blow my knee out next game, it's all right. It's not the end of the world. I have other things that I care about, right? So I think that, as far as impact, the Stanley Cup, it's pretty tough to beat. It's a great moment personally, but also, it's a huge kind of payoff for all those people that help support me in chasing this dream, right? But I think, as far as impact goes, I think, setting an example for younger teammates, showing younger teammates or other people, that may be coming through hockey, that you can have, a lot of things going on in your life and it doesn't detract from you as a hockey player. It doesn't make you a worse player to have other interests outside of the game, to show younger teammates that, you don't have to fit this mold of what you think a hockey player is. You don't have to love golf. It doesn't matter, if you don't. You don't have to love country music. If you're from Alberta and play hockey, it's fine if you do, but you don't have to. And I think building those cultures, like we did in Boston, like we had in Calgary, like we started in Edmonton, where, to make sure that it was inclusive of whoever you are. You don't have to fit this mold of what you think of Boston Bruin is. We want you to show up to the rink and be you. And we think that, we had really good leadership on those teams where that was really important to our success as a team, is that, people showed up as hockey players to play the game, but they also showed up as who they were as people, right? And we're not all the same. We all have our things and we all have our differences and we all have, things that make us unique. And, when you show up to work and we show up to a work, like the type of work that we did, where it's very high performance, you don't want anything holding you back, right? And I think that, by showing up as who you are as a person and comfortable in your own skin and what you're all about, we're going to get the best performance out of you. And so I think that's the legacy of some of those, things is hopefully those guys that I played with that were younger than me, guys that, saw the type of atmosphere that we were trying to build, hopefully they, saw the success of that and help build that on the teams that they're involved with, whether they're as players, and many of them will go on to be coaches or general managers. And it's that generational shift of making that, kind of culture kind of pervasive through hockey.
Pervasive through all of hockey. Currently with your new role with the NHL, you've been in a couple of years. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day today. I really appreciate it, and best of luck to you with the NHL.
Yeah, I appreciate it. That's great that you guys are doing these conversations.